Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Vallabha, Radha Vallabha Radhe, Jaya Radha Vallabha, Radha Vallabha Radhe, Jaya Gauranita, 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 Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Pita Gaur Premanand.
Jayom Vishnupad Paramhams Parivrajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Thai Gaur Premanande Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So today we will discuss one of the most controversial characters in the Mahabharata. Often the Mahabharata is an immensely popular book, at least among those who know some things about the Indian tradition. And in that, Karna is often seen as a tragically wronged figure. And in this class, I'll presume that most of you know the basic storyline of the Mahabharata. Am I correct in my assumption? Okay. So, of course, some specific points I will elaborate, where some issues I will go into detail. But overall, you should be able to understand the analysis which we are going to do. So I won't be telling so much the story. I'll be primarily analyzing the story over here. Now, the Mahabharata, every book has some defining purpose. For example, the Srimad Bhagavatam's focus is on what is the duty of a dying person. If we look at the Ramayana, that starts with Valmiki Rishi asking Narada Muni, what are the characteristics of an ideal human being? And then in response to that, Narada Muni tells about Lord Ram and his character and his activities. And so there's a, right at the start of the Ramayana, there's a quick summary of the major events of the Ramayana. And then after that, Valmiki Muni goes into a trance and he gets the meter of the Ramayana and then he composes the Ramayana. So the theme of the Ramayana is primarily that what are the characteristics of an ideal human being? So this question permeates the full book. So every book has a defining question that permeates the entire book, around which everything in the book is centered. Similarly, the Mahabharata has a defining question. And that question is, what is dharma? What is dharma? That is the question that the Mahabharata centers on. And there are several places where it is said that dharma is very guhya. That is not very easy to understand dharma. Its intricacies are very complex to figure out. Now, one of the characteristics of the Mahabharata is that it explains that dharma is categorical. Dharma is contextual. It is not categorical. What do I mean by contextual and categorical? That here, roughly when I use what is dharma, the word dharma has multiple meanings. And in the Mahabharata, when it is used as a defining question, it basically means what is duty? What is one's duty? That is the question which the Mahabharata asks. Now, duty or morality or the right code of conduct, what the Mahabharata's narrative tells us is that it is contextual. It is not categorical. Categorical means that this is the category of right and this is the category of wrong. And everything in this category will be right and everything in this category will be wrong. So, real life is not so simple that you can classify things so easily. This is right and this is wrong. So, for example, in a general sense, to be truthful is good and to lie is bad. But there can be exceptional situations. Now, suppose there is a religious or a racist or a communal riot going on, and there are 100 blood-crazy people chasing someone. And that victim comes to our house and asks to be safe. So, say we give him a hiding place, and then that crowd comes along and says, is anyone here? Now what should we do? Should we be truthful? At that time, by being truthful, we'll cause the death of that person. So, truthfulness is a good quality. But we cannot put it in an absolute category that being truthful is always very good. And being false is always bad. So, it also works out in the Puranas also have this. There's a story it's an involved story. I won't get into the specifics of the story. But the point is there was a Brahmana who had taken a vrata that I will always be truthful. And he was sitting in a village at a sort of crossroad under a tree and he was doing meditation. At that time he saw a cow rushing away in great fear. And then the cow, so it was a crossroad, and the cow went in the left. And then a butcher came there with a butchering knife. And he asked this Brahmana, where is the cow? Now this Brahmana had a dharma sankat. So what to do? He said, I cannot speak a lie, but how can I speak a truth? So finally, he decided to take a medium course of action, and he did not speak anything, but he just pointed. He pointed with left, the butcher went and he slaughtered the cow. And in the Puranas described that in the next lifetime, it's a whole intricate story, but he became a traveling mendicant, And he came to a particular house, and in that house, the lady was there, and the husband was there. So, this lady, this woman of the house, she became attracted to this mendicant. And then when he refused, she got very angry, and she blamed him. She took a knife, and she stabbed her husband, and then she started screaming. And when the neighbors came, he said, he had evil designs on me. When my husband came to defend me, he killed my husband, and now he wants to abuse me. So then the villagers were shocked. He was a mendicant. How can he do such a thing? And then they decided that, we can't kill him, but they chopped off his hands. Because with his hands, he would try to assault her. That was the accusation. And then, when he went, he was thinking, why did such a thing happen? He started praying fervently, and then he heard Akashvani, in which that story was told. So, that Brahmana had become this traveling mendicant now. That cow had become the wife. And the butcher had become the husband. Basically, the cow killed the butcher, but because with his hands, he had pointed where the cow had gone. So, his hands got cut in this lifetime. So, the point of the story is that we cannot have morality as absolutely categorical. It is contextual. There will be certain situations where certain things which are normally right may turn out to be wrong. So, with this background of categorical and contextual morality, now we can look at Karna's life. So, I'll analyze his life in 3 main phases. First is his birth. Second is his growth and training and his maturing as a warrior. And third is the Kurukshetra war itself, where ultimately he met his death on the 17th day. Now, Karna, throughout the Mahabharata, often feels that he is wronged because he was considered as born in a Suta family. Suta was a charioteer's family. Now, the charioteer, the Sutas, they would assist the Kshatriyas, but they were not considered at all in the same category as Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas were very respectable warriors. So, now it's interesting that we know in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sakale neha mahata yogo nashtah parantava saivayam mayatedya yoga prokta paradana. So he says that in 4.2, that this knowledge, which I had given originally at the beginning of creation, this has become lost now. So sakale neha mahata. How it has got lost? By the power of time. And I have come now to re-establish it. So now Krishna is saying, at his time, 5,000 years ago, that this knowledge has become lost. Now what this means is that the society in which Krishna is coming is, even according to Krishna's assessment, not an ideal society. Even in Krishna's society, the principles of dharma, at least to some extent, are lost. In fact, they are much more lost now than what they were at that time. In fact, now people are so lost that they don't even know they are lost. Sometimes when a person is drunk a little bit, that person thinks, that, hey, I'm drunk, I should not drive a vehicle now. Otherwise, driving under intoxication is not just legally penalizable, but it is also dangerous. We may kill ourselves, we may kill somebody else. But if a person is very drunk, that person doesn't even understand I'm drunk. So, to be drunk is bad, but to be so drunk as to not understand I'm drunk, that is even worse. So like that, people are so lost that they don't even know that there is any ultimate goal for life, leave alone pursuing it, or leave alone thinking that I don't know the goal. So, but point is that even Krishna at his time is saying that the society which is there and the culture that is there, that is not the ideal culture. So the ideal culture is the culture of Varnashram, which Krishna describes in 4.13 is Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. It is a division according to qualities and activities. In every society, for the efficient organization of the social body, there has to be some kind of division of labor. Now, that division of labor may, in today's society, it largely works out to be circumstantial. That means, people, depending on where they are born, or what their financial resources are. They get a particular kind of education. And even after they get a particular kind of education, they depending on what kind of jobs are available at a particular time, they'll take that job. So someone may do some hardcore engineering, mechanical or civil, but then they find that is not very lucrative, so they may shift to software. So the point is that the kind of jobs that we get and the kind of training that we get, it is largely circumstantial, dependent, not necessarily, very rarely on the person's own nature or interests or abilities. It largely becomes on circumstances. And this often leads to a lot of job dissatisfaction, because people feel that I'm not in the kind of job I would like to do. So this problem, the Varnashram tried to address this by recognizing that different people have different natures. Now, the word Varna is often translated as caste, but that is not an accurate translation, because the word caste has certain Eurocentric denominations where it was used in Europe, and the word caste comes from color. And in the West, they had the idea that the people of the white skin, they are superior, and everyone else is inferior. In fact, one of the most famous British literary luminaries, literary figures, Rudyard Kipling, he said that actually the whole world except the white man is uncivilized. And he wrote a poem that it is the white man's burden that he has to civilize the rest of the society, rest of the world. So, based on their own cultural conceptions, the word caste has certain denotations which really did not apply, at least in the original Vedic context. So, instead of considering Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra as caste, we use the word Varna, but Varna may not correlate with us, with our terminology. So, the appropriate word for this would be 4 human types. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, they are not castes, they are 4 human types. So broadly speaking, humans can be classified as intellectuals, as administrators, as merchants, and as general assistants. So now we will see, now in today's society, there are various, psychology has come up with various systems of personality classification. Some people use enneagrams, some people have type A, type B, type C, some people use 7 types of intelligences. There are different ways of classifying. Now, just as those systems of classification are essentially universal. So, like universal in the sense that they are referring to human types. So, the Varnashram is essentially talking about 4 human types. And original system was that the people who are of a particular nature, say if a person is an intellectual, and that person is supposed asked to run a business, the person will be miserable. For everyone, there are problems in life. Whether a person is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, everybody will face problems. But the expertise of Varnashram is that it gives people the problems that they will like to solve. If you come to an intellectual and tell that person, if you come to the devotee context, if you tell an intellectual that, okay, there is a verse in the Bhagavatam which says that in certain circumstances one can lie. Can you find that verse for me? Now a person is intellectual, yes, which pastime can it come in? Lying, maybe it's the Bali Maharaj pastime. So the person will be very eager to search it. And now if somebody is of a Vaishya nature, they say, just forget the verse, Why do you need the verse? You know the point, it's good enough. On the other hand, if you tell a Vaishya, we want to build a new temple and we have to raise a lot of funds. The Vaishya will be enlivened. Yes, we can do this. On the other hand, if you tell a Brahmana, to build a big temple and we have to raise $10,000, $50,000, he says, what is the need? Just study scripture and be happy. So, depending on one's human type, one will find certain problems inspiring to tackle. And certain problems will seem just like burdens. Why do you have to do this? So, that the world is filled with problems is undeniable. But when people are forced to face problems that they are not equipped to face, then the misery becomes compounded. So the expertise of Varnashram is depending on the talents of people, they are given a certain kinds of problems to deal with. And that way, several things happen. People feel satisfied because their talents are being utilized, and society also gets an optimal contribution from the different talents that are there in different people. And in the original Varnashram system, birth was not unimportant. Birth was also important because it was understood that, say, if a Brahmana and a Brahmani, they get married, both of them have Brahmanical consciousness, and when they beget children, it's not by chance that a particular kind of child is born to a particular kind of parents. Now, there's a whole philosophical understanding that depending on the kind of consciousness that the parents have, the souls of that corresponding consciousness are attracted to that particular set of parents. It's all arranged by the Supreme Lord. So the point which is that if a Brahmana and a Brahmani unite, a soul of Brahmanical disposition will be born from their womb. So it would happen quite often that the children of Brahmanas would be Brahmanas. And similarly for the other Varnas also. But this was not mandatory. In the Bhagavatam itself, in the 7th canto, after the Prahlad Maharaj's pastime actually goes from 1st chapter to the 10th chapter. Then from 11 to 15 chapters in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it describes the Varanas in the ashramas. And there's a discussion elaborately on that. There it is said that the characteristics of the various Varanas is given and the duties of the various Varanas is there. And then at the end it is said that etatu lakshanas proktas, that the Varanas are to be determined not by birth but by lakshana, by the qualities. So, if a person of, say, a Vaishya propensity exhibits Brahmanical qualifications, then that person is engaged with the Brahmana. And similarly for whichever Varanas. So, there was a structure, but there is also flexibility within the structure. But the nature of any system is that it is only as good as the people who are running that system. And over time, things start getting deteriorated. So by the time of the Mahabharata, the caste system, to some extent, had become stratified. And people would be largely defined by their birth. This itself is not the original system. This was, by that time itself, a deviation. And of course, that deviation became further later on. And certainly, the caste system as it exists today is a great evil in Indian society, and it's led to a lot of discrimination. So, but at the same time, there is often a lot of anti-India, anti-Hindu propaganda, anti-Vedic propaganda, which demonizes the caste system. Certainly, the caste system as it exists today, we are not here to defend that. But the point is that this sort of discrimination has been there in every society. In every society where where certain class of people have more power, in order to entrench themselves more in power, and in order to keep those who are lower to them under control, people often become unscrupulous. Now, although there were lower caste people who were exploited, who were discriminated against in many ways, but if you look at the rest of the world, everywhere there was something like that. If you look at European society, they had their broad 4 classes. They had the papacy was the priesthood. Then they had the aristocracy, that was the royalty. That was that's equivalent to this Brahman Kshatriya. Then they have their serfs. And they have the mercantile class, so bourgeoisie and the serfs. So basically, they also had something similar. So every society will have these 4 functional divisions. The thinkers, the administrators, the merchants, and the laborers. But if you see, when the Europeans went to America, there were Native Americans over there. And what happened? It's like, there's one Native American chief. He said, when the white man came to America, we had the land and they had the Bibles. Now we have the Bibles and they have the land. So what he meant is that actually those people were living there, but then the power was taken away from them. And if you see, it was a lot of terrible killing of the Native Americans happened. Literally millions of people were killed. Similarly, in European history also, we see there was discrimination against the blacks. The Africans were enslaved, and for a long time, there was discrimination. And even now, although society claims to be progressive, but still there is some discrimination. So discrimination is a characteristic that happens wherever some humans get power and they let their lower nature take force. So similar happened in the Varnashram also. But at least we will see that even in India, although lower castes have been discriminated against, but still the lower castes are living. If you look at America, the Native Americans are near extinction now. So certainly that level of discrimination was not there where they were threatened and killed. So the point is this caste is going to play a very significant role in Karna's narrative. So we can broadly understand the historical context. So now Karna was born to Kunti before she was married. So Kunti, she was just a teenage girl, and at that time the tradition was that, even now it is there to some extent, that girls, in order that they can have good husbands and they can have good children, they are urged to serve saintly people. So that's why when in Maharaj Kunti Bhoj's palace, Durvasa Muni came, so Kunti was engaged to serve him. And she served, and Durvasa Muni was pleased with her service, and he gave her a blessing. He said that you can invoke a devata. I'll give you a mantra by which you can invoke a devata. And now Kunti was just a teenage girl, and she just out of curiosity invoked the mantra. And then Surya came over there. And Surya said, now you have called me, and I'm meant to give you a son. He said, no, I'm not married. How can I accept a son now? He said, no, this mantra, see, the devatas are themselves not entirely independent. If certain mantras are chanted, they are expected to give certain things. In some situations, they can exercise discretionary powers. But in general, the devatas are not independent. So that's why sometimes even the demons do certain rituals or do certain tapasya. The devatas are obliged to give certain results. Surya said, you chanted this mantra, I have to give you a child. And then he said, no, but if, it will be attained, and if I lose my virginity, how will this child be taken care of? She says, no, you will not lose your virginity, and the child will be protected. So then he got a child, and then Kunti, she was petrified. She took her maid, and then when the child was born, she put a very nice wooden container where she had cushions, and she put a lot of her jewelry and treasury. He thought that I cannot keep this child, but whoever finds this child, they should know that this child is coming from a very well-to-do family, and all these jewels are there to indicate that this child should be taken care of. And then as she put her child in the river next to her palace, she was praying fervently. She was praying to the Veni God, please let this box be guided towards some safe hand. She was praying to the river deity, please let this box not capsize. She was praying to the Lord Vishnu. She was praying to Surya, it's your son, please take care. And then, with a heavy heart, she let that child go. And then, this child was found by Adirath and Radhe. They were Sutas in the Kuru assembly, in the Kuru dynasty. And they started taking care of him. And they treated him. They saw this was celestial child. Now, Kunti also saw this very special person. He had kundala and he had kavach, earrings, and he had armor which was innate to his body. So, Adirath and Radhe, they started taking care of him. And then their son came to be known as Karna. So, Karna, because he was brought up in a Suta family, so he was throughout his life identified as a Suta. And he went on and became a very accomplished warrior. Some teachers refused to teach him, but eventually he learned from Parshuram. But Parshuram had said that, Kshatriyas have become very autocratic, so I will not teach Kshatriyas. So he pretended to be a Brahmana, and he learned from him, and became his most expert student. But eventually, Parshuram came to know that this is not a Brahmana. So he said, oh, you have lied. He said that because you have lied, so the knowledge that you have got, the most important weapon which I have taught you, you will lose that knowledge. And then as he was going away disturbed, he suddenly saw an animal. And he thought this is a wild animal. He took out his bow and he shot. And he pierced that animal. And suddenly he heard a wail. And he went there and he saw to horror that was a cow. And there's a Brahmana to whom the cow belonged. And he said, You look like a Kshatriya, you look like a respectable warrior. How could you have killed a cow like this? This is atrocious. He says, I curse you that at the very moment when you are supposed to fight your greatest battle, your chariot will sink into the ground. Your chariot will be swallowed by the ground, and in that way, just as you have made this cow immobilized, you will become immobilized. So Karna got these double curses. And then these proved very, in one sense, fatal for him during his final encounter with Arjuna. So now let's go back in the story before we move ahead. We could say all this is unjust. First of all, why was he treated as a Suta if he was actually a Kshatriya born in Kunti's family? Then yes, it is unjust. But the simple fact is that life is unjust. It's for everyone. But when I say life is unjust, I am talking from this life perspective. When we are students in class, we may find that some students, they just have a photographic memory. And we have to study for hours and hours, and the student just studies for a few minutes and everything is there in the brain. It seems so unfair. This person remembers something so quickly. Or we are doing a job, some job. Some people are like software whiz kids. We spend hours toiling on something and they just finish it in minutes. So if we look at things from a limited this life perspective, life is unfair. There is no point in resenting it. It's just the fact of life. And if we want to look at the unfairness of life, then it was not only Karna who got a raw deal. The Pandavas got a raw deal also. The Pandavas, they were born in a royal family, but their father passed away when they were very young. And then, for no fault of theirs, they found themselves right in the middle of a political power struggle actuated by an envious cousin and allowed by an important by an important uncle. So the Pandavas never did anything to trigger the envy of Duryodhana specifically. But Duryodhana was right from his childhood, he was very envious of them. And the Pandavas suffered so much. So the whole point of scripture is not to rant on that there's injustice to this person or injustice to that person. But the point of scripture is to teach us how to respond to adversity with integrity. How to respond to adversity with integrity. Yes, there are problems. If we see the Ramayana, what was the fault of Lord Ram? Suddenly Kaikeyi desired that my son should be a king, and tomorrow Ram is going to become the king, and the next day he is an exile. Can you imagine such a situation? Say a person is supposed to become, even if in this world we see somebody is going to inherit his father's property, and suddenly next morning you come to know, or that night only, you are penniless beggar on the street. So for what fault? It is no fault of his. But the point is, Lord Ram responded with integrity. So in one sense, if you want to look at injustice, there was injustice for the Pandavas also. They did not do anything to deserve the kind of atrocities that the Kauravas did on them. So injustice happens to everyone. The test is how we respond to that with integrity. And unfortunately, Karna makes wrong choices. We'll come to Karna's wrong choices, but let's expand this perspective first. And from this life's perspective, there are many things which will seem unjust. Now, if we expand the perspective and look at previous lives, then what seems unjust also turns out to be just. So Karna, in his previous life, was a demon named Sahasra Kavacha. He had performed a huge amount of austerities, and especially to please Surya. By pleasing Surya, he had got a benediction that he would have 1,000 kavachas on his body. That's why his name was Sahasra Kavacha. And he had got a benediction that anybody who would destroy even one kavacha on his body, as soon as that kavacha would get destroyed and fall off his body, that person would fall dead. And now, without destroying all the 1,000 kavachas, nobody could kill him. And whoever, that means, there has to be, he was himself a formidable warrior, and there had to be 1,000 formidable warriors. 999 of them would die, and 1,000 maybe, 1,000 would also die, and maybe 1,001 would be able to kill him. It was almost impossible. And he started terrorizing the world. And finally the sages and the kings and the devatas, they went to Narnarayan Rishi. Now Narnarayan Rishi are both forms of Vishnu. They're dual incarnations of Vishnu. And that the Mahabharata says that Narnarayan came as Arjuna and Krishna later. So Narnarayan Rishis, when they heard about Sahasra Kavacha, they said, okay, we will take care of him. So they had, they knew the Mrityunjay mantra. Mrityunjay mantra is a mantra by which a person who is dead can also be brought back to life. So Nara, and there was one more condition, that actually, and nobody, no warrior, however powerful he would be, so Sahasra Kavacha had asked the benediction, that person would have to fight him for 1,000 years before he could destroy one Kavacha. And like that, you have to destroy 1,000 Kavachas. So what would happen is that now Nara they fought, and when they fought, Nara fought and destroyed one Kavacha. And as soon as he destroyed the Kavacha, he fell dead. So at that time Narayan was there, Narayan Rishi was there, not Lord Narayan, Narayan Rishi. He immediately took up a bow and started fighting. And he gave, now the Mrityunjay mantra and the Mrityunjay result of that mantra, its potency was not lost. So what would happen is, when Nara has died, Narayan would chant the Mrityunjay mantra, bring Nara back to life. And now the mantra is lost. So Nara would perform austerity for 1,000 years, while Narayan will be fighting with Sahasra Kavacha. And then Narayan destroyed a second Kavacha. And then Narayan will fall dead. So then Nara will chant the Mrityunjay mantra, bring Narayan back to life. And then Narayan will again start performing austerity to get the Mrityunjay mantra back again. And for 1,000 years, Nara will fight again. And like that, they destroyed 999 Kavachas. One last Kavacha remained. And at that time, now Sahasra Kavacha was very arrogant. He thought, nobody can destroy me. But when 999 Kavachas got destroyed, he said, this is dangerous. He just fled from there. And he wondered where to go. He thought, oh, Surya is my Lord. He has given me this blessing. He ran to Surya, give me shelter, give me shelter, give me shelter. Now, one of the codes of a Kshatriya is that if anybody asks for shelter, you have to provide shelter. So now Surya said that if he has come to ask for shelter for me, I have to provide him shelter. So he offered him shelter. And Narnarayan Rishi said, no, he's a terrorist of a universal scope. He will terrorize the whole universe. So you should not give him shelter. He said, no, I have to give my shelter. So then Narnarayan Rishi decided not to create hostilities with Surya, and they kept Surya. Now Surya started thinking that what should I do with this person? And it was at that time that Kunti chanted the mantra. So then Surya was thinking, the Sahasra Kavacha is there with me. He has only one Kavacha remaining now. And what should I do with him? So then he gave him as a son to Kunti. So now if you look from the background point of view, so Sahasra Kavacha, he had some level of dharmic inclination. That's why, that's why he did worship, so he worshipped Surya. And further, he stayed with Surya for some time. Then he was also in the womb of Kunti for some time. So there was some dharmic inclination in him. But also from his previous life, because he was a demon, he had a demoniac mentality also. So that's why when Karna is born, we see his character has shades. Now Duryodhana is quite evil. He is always envious, always arrogant, and his character is largely black. But Karna is not like that. There are shades of grey in his character. So he had noble qualities, but he also had some ignoble trends, which we will see. So if you look from the broader perspective of previous life, what Karna got in this life was a result of his past life karma. Because he had terrorized the universe so much, so he was in this life got a position which was not with much honor. So his Suta birth was the result of his past life karma. Now, in that sense, it's not ultimately unjust. From this life's perspective, let's move forward now. So when he was living as a Suta, he got education, and now he felt that I want to prove my prowess. I want the world to know how glorious a Kshatriya I am. And now where to do that? How to announce, I am a big person. So Drona, he had taught the Pandavas and the Kauravas in his academy. And then he decided to have a martial exhibition to exhibit the skills of the princes for the citizens to see. Now the idea is that citizens have to have faith in their king, that this king can protect me. And that's why if the king has a lot of martial skills, then that inspires faith in the king. So this was an exhibition in which the Kuru princes, that means here Kuru is used genetically, the Pandavas as well as the Kauravas, they would exhibit their power. So that's what they did. And all of them came and they started exhibiting prowess. So Duryodhana was expert at mace fighting, even Bhima was expert at mace fighting. And when it was supposed to be exhibition fight, but when they started fighting, it became a real fight. So then when it became a real fight, then Drona told Ashwatthama, go in between them, stop them, pull them apart. And then everybody exhibited their skills, and Arjuna came. Arjuna was phenomenally expert. He exhibited such skill that left everyone dazzled. And as everybody was applauding, suddenly they heard some thunderous footsteps in the entrance of that arena. And when everyone looked, they saw this was a magnificent looking figure of a person who had a bow and arrow, and he came clapping in. And he said that I can do everything that Partha has done, and I can do better. Do I have the permission to exhibit my skills? He's bowed indifferently towards Drona. So Drona looked at him and he nodded. He started exhibiting his skills. And he equaled everything that Arjuna had done. Now he had said, I will excel Arjuna, but he did not excel. He equaled him. And then after that, he said, can I have a duel with Partha? Now Arjuna was already annoyed. Who is this person who's just come in? See, it is, as I said, it was a private exhibition by the royalty, by the martial teacher of a kingdom, to exhibit to the citizens of that kingdom the skills of their princes. Suddenly he had come in, so Partha was eager, so he came forward. And at that time, so Kripa said, wait, duels can be only among equals. So we know the antecedents of Arjuna, we know who he is, from where he is, so can you tell your antecedents? So then Karna looked down. So everybody understood that he's not a Kshatriya. So now, what had happened was Duryodhana already had envy. See, how things had happened is, you have to go a little back into the history. When there was the previous generation, there was Vichitravirya was a king, and through some system, he got 3 sons. I won't go into details. He got Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. But Vidura was born of a maid servant, so he was not going to become a king. So the kings could either be Dhritarashtra or Pandu. But Dhritarashtra had been born blind. So now, the king, it's not that blindness is a disqualification necessarily, but especially for a king at those times, he was not just a figurehead who ruled politically. The king, nowadays if we have, in no country nowadays, the political head of state will go on a battlefield to fight. The military is different and the political wing is different. But at those times, the king would lead from the front. And the military commanders of the Kuru kingdom, they said, if you have a king without eyes, how will he lead the army? So Dhritarashtra couldn't become the king, so Pandu became the king. And then Pandu was a little renounced nature, so he consolidated the power of the Pandava, of the kingdom, but then he said, I want to go to the forest and devote myself to ascetic practices. And so he went with his wives. So now, in the meanwhile, Duryodhana was born along with his 99 brothers to Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. Now, because at that time, it was not even known that Pandu had got sons, and whether the sons would come back. So it was thought by everyone that Duryodhana will become the next king. And because he was going to become the next king, everybody pampered him. He was the center of everyone's attention. And he became like a spoiled child. Nowadays, many times children who are born in very prosperous families, they have an entitlement complex. They think, I am entitled to everything. I have this and this and this and this and this, everything I want. So he had that entitlement complex. He said, I'm entitled to the attention, to the prestige, to the royal privileges. And suddenly, when he was living like this, and although he had become to some extent a spoiled brat, in the sense that he was arrogant, not very respectful to elders, but they all tolerated it because there was no one else, he was going to become the king. But when suddenly the Pandavas came back, and both the courtiers, the Kuru elders, as well as the citizens, they could not but see the contrast between the spoiled and arrogant behavior of Duryodhana and the very cultured and respectful conduct of especially Yudhishthira. So, Duryodhana could see the affections of everyone shifting from him to Yudhishthira. So that created irritation and envy. And on top of that, what happened is, Duryodhana was also quite well built. He was good at wrestling and fighting. But so one is that in terms of political entitlement, and in the martial spirit, in terms of physical strength. But even in physical strength, Bhima outclassed him. So both ways, he felt himself being displaced. Now Yudhishthira never had any envy. And it was not that he tried to do anything to belittle Duryodhana. But Duryodhana just felt like that. And that's why he was very envious of the Pandavas. So now when they went to the Gurukul of Drona and trained, there also he found that although he also became a good archer, he was just no match for Arjuna. So he thought that if I am to gain the kingdom in future, I will be, Yudhishthira is a virtuous person, but I can outclass him by conspiracy. And as if there is a war, he felt I can deal with Bhima. But who will deal with Arjuna? And when he saw Karna exhibiting his skills, yes, Karna is my man. And then what did he do? When he saw there the objection being raised, we don't know his antecedents. So immediately he grabbed that opportunity and he said, can't you see? This person has got such abilities. He is a warrior. And if you think that a true warrior is one who is a king only, then I will make him a king right now. And he immediately gave him the kingdom of Anga. So now, interestingly, this is considered to be as an act of great charity, great helpfulness, and Karna became very indebted. And it is natural. If somebody is being dishonored in the public assembly, and then somebody comes and saves the honor at that time, then naturally, that person will feel very indebted. And Karna said, I'm so grateful to you. So immediately there itself, in the martial exhibition only, Duryodhana arranged for priests to come and he had Karna coronated as the king of Anga. And Karna had tears of gratitude. He says, I'm so grateful to you. What can I do for you? I'm at your service. He says, all that I want is your friendship. Now Duryodhana knew what buttons to press. By which he really... We'll see how he manipulated Karna to some extent. And later on, how that manipulation worked for Karna's own harm. We'll see that also. But anyway, at this point, Karna was helped by Duryodhana. And Karna naturally felt indebted to Duryodhana. So their friendship was born over here. By the time this whole thing happened, then the sun set. So that day the conflict could not take place. The duel between Karna and Arjuna could not take place. Karna was not originally, at least in this life, he did not have an evil nature. He was quite a principled warrior. And he is an example of a good person spoiled by bad association. He's a good person spoiled by bad association. So initially, when the Pandavas started to become very prosperous, and Duryodhana and the Kauravas were envious, when Duryodhana started hatching schemes to try to steal everything away from the Pandavas, Karna said, why do you need all these schemes? Let's challenge them for a fight, and we'll defeat them in an open fight, and we'll get their power. So, in the initial stages, Karna protested. Karna tried to oppose Duryodhana's schemes. But over time, that bad association had its effect. See, in general, we, whichever community we belong to, or whichever social circle we belong to, we want acceptability and respectability in that. And then we will do what it takes to become respectable. Sometimes, say, if in a college or in a university, some children may be born in a very nice cultured family. But when those students go to colleges and they will see all their friends there, they say crack nasty jokes and vulgar things they do. Now, just to get a sense of belonging in that circle, sometimes people also start doing that. They may not like to do it, but just because that sort of jokes bring a laugh in that circle, they'll do that. So we get molded by the circle that we belong to. And Karna, unfortunately, let himself be molded by that circle. Now, going back further a little bit, Duryodhana gave the Anga kingdom to Karna. But interestingly, if we look at the political power at that time, the Anga kingdom was not Duryodhana's to give. It was not Duryodhana's to give, because if you see how it was, Pandu had been the king. And when Pandu departed, Dhritarashtra could not become the king because he was blind. So Dhritarashtra was simply a caretaker. And Duryodhana was the caretaker's son. So he had actually no political power to give a kingdom like that to anyone. But neither the Pandavas nor the Kuru elders opposed Duryodhana over there, because they all thought it's one family. If in a family, in a public place, somebody gives a charity, and then if you tell, hey, you cannot give a charity like that, it's a disgrace. So the Pandavas and the other Kuru elders did not oppose. But technically speaking, what charity Karna received from Duryodhana, that was not Duryodhana's to give to Karna. But still Duryodhana gave, and the Pandavas also assented to that. And now Karna, he completely sided with Duryodhana. And over a period of time, he became so spoiled. He himself lost his virtuous nature. It became obscured. And it came to such an extent that when the Asat Sabhaya, when the gambling match took place in the Kuru assembly, actually there are multiple reasons for that gambling match. First is that there are certain rituals which are to be done in particular situations. So it was understood that when Rajasuya Yajna is performed, at the end of a yajna, the king is supposed to play a gambling match. So Yudhishthira had to play a match, but that match could have just been a casual match, with no high stakes. But Shakuni and Duryodhana, they hatched a plan, and they said, oh, Yudhishthira, you have become such a big king, so you come to our kingdom and we will have a grand gambling match over there. Now Yudhishthira himself was suspicious. He said, better, if you have a gambling match like that, the gambling can lead to fights. So Yudhishthira opposed. But Yudhishthira was very respectful to his elders. And he considered Dhritarashtra, in the absence of my father, is like my father. And so I have to obey his instructions. And so he had the gambling match. And in the gambling match, the Pandavas lost everything. And then eventually, when the Pandavas lost even themselves, then Yudhishthira put Draupadi for gambling. And when Draupadi was herself lost, then Dushasana went to her private chambers and he dragged her back. So at that time, Draupadi had just ended her period and she was just dressed in a single cloth. And he dragged her in that single cloth, and it was so atrocious. And at that time, Draupadi's character come. If you see in this whole the gambling match, the only character who comes out shining is Draupadi. The way she defends herself, the way she defends her husbands, and the way she tries to remind the whole assembly of their duty. It's extraordinary. So now, when Draupadi heard what has happened, she was shocked. But then, when the commands came and she came to the assembly and she realized that there is some way I have to salvage the situation. And she said, assembly, I will do whatever you tell, but I have a question. That if Yudhishthira gambled himself before he gambled me, then if he was not his own owner, then how could he be my owner? And how could he have gambled me? Now the point is, first of all, the gambling was supposed to be a casual sport. It's not that humans have to gamble. And what to speak of a woman like you, Draupadi. But the assembly had become so blinded to everything else that Draupadi caught on to this technicality. He said, somehow I'll try to salvage the situation through this. So at that time, I can't go into the whole discussion over here. But one of the points that Vidura and even Vikarna, Vidura strongly opposed what was happening over there. And Vikarna was among the Kaurava brothers, he was a relatively virtuous person. And he also opposed. He said, Draupadi has raised a very valid question. You should answer this. And when nobody answered, he said, then I will give an answer. And he said, my answer is, firstly, Yudhishthir was constrained to gamble. He did not come willingly. Secondly, the gambling match has to be held between the two people who are staking the wealth. This gambling match was between Duryodhana and Yudhishthir. But Duryodhana appointed Shakuni to throw the dice. This itself is wrong. It's like, say, Zimbabwe wants to fight with India in a cricket match. And Zimbabwe thinks, our cricket team is not very good, so we will get the South African cricket team for 5 hours. No, you can't do that. Then it's a match between South Africa and India. It's not a match between Zimbabwe and India. So, if the gambling match was to be between Duryodhana and Yudhishthir, Duryodhana should have been throwing the dice. Shakuni throwing the dice was wrong. So, Karna said, this is the second thing wrong. And third thing is what Draupadi has said. Because Yudhishthir has gambled already and lost himself, so Draupadi is not lost. And therefore, I urge you, O king, now Dhritarashtra was still the king, so everybody was trying to say, I urge you, O king, to declare the results of this gambling match null and void. And give the whole kingdom back to the Pandavas and let them go back in peace. This is what Vidura had said, this is what Vikarna had said. And the whole temper of the assembly was mood of the assembly was shifting in their direction. But at that time, Karna got up. And he silenced Vikarna with his moving his huge arms. And he said that I have heard many wrong things going on. I have seen and heard many wrong things going on in this assembly. But the most wrong is the speech of Vikarna. Actually, Vikarna was defending, was trying to correct what was wrong. But Vikarna said this is the most wrong thing. He said that nobody forced Yudhishthir. He gambled willingly. Anytime he could have stopped from gambling. And as far as Shakuni throwing the dice, Yudhishthir agreed to that. He should have objected at that time itself. He did not object. And he says, as far as Draupadi is concerned, a woman who marries 5 husbands, she is already a prostitute. So whether you drag her into an assembly and whether she is clothed or unclothed, it doesn't matter at all. He says, you are a maid servant and you should act like a maid servant. Now, factually speaking, even maid servants are not treated like this. So now, for Karna to call Draupadi a prostitute, this is a grievous, outrageous insult. Not only is it not true, even if it were true, it's not to be spoken like that in public. Now, prostitute is a woman who sells her own body for money. Now, Draupadi in the Swayamvar, that's why she participated in the Swayamvar simply because her father told her to. And the idea was she was going to get one husband. And Arjuna, in a disguise, won her. But then, because of various circumstances, she got 5 husbands. We can't go into the story. But later on, not only Draupadi, but even Drupada, father, Drishtadhyumna, they all objected. How can a woman have 5 husbands? And then Vyasadeva appeared over there. And Vyasadeva told a story from a previous life. Draupadi was a Rishi Kanya in a previous life. And she was not getting a husband. So she did worship to Lord Shiva. And after a long time was to Lord Shiva, when Lord Shiva appeared, what do you want? He said, she was so desperate. She said, I want a husband, I want a husband, I want a husband, I want a husband, I want a husband. She asked 5 times. So Shiva said, you will have 5 husbands. So, anyway, the point is that Draupadi did not go out of her way to get 5 husbands. Now, that was what was said by her elders. Kunti said that. And then Vyasadeva said that. And Drupada finally sanctioned it. So, there is just nothing right in that statement. Now, Karna surely had some issues with Draupadi. Because in Draupadi Swayamvar, the purpose of Swayamvar was to have her select her groom. So, at that time there was a contest, a particular target was set. And when, now there is a there is the Mahabharata as a book, and there are popular renditions of the Ramayana, of the Mahabharata, or of Ramayana also. So now, often in the popular renditions, it is shown as if when Karna came to contest, so Draupadi said, I will not marry a Suta. I will not marry a Suta, and therefore she rejected Karna as her suitor. And Karna felt extremely insulted by that. Now, if you look at the Mahabharata, the Mahabharata is a huge book. It's 110,000 verses. Now, before the Mahabharata in the European history, the longest poems were thought to be Iliad and Odyssey. But when the Europeans discovered Mahabharata, they found the Mahabharata is 8 times longer than Iliad and Odyssey combined together. It's astronomical length. And Madhvacharya, in his commentary, says that, and he has written not exactly a commentary, a summary study of the Mahabharata. He calls it the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnay. And he says that there are many things which have been interpolated in the Mahabharata. So, for example, many times in TV shows also the Mahabharata, they said that when, we'll come to that incident a little later, but when Duryodhana slips in the Maya Sabha of Yudhishthir, he slips and falls on the water. And it is very humiliating for a king to slip and fall like that. At that time, Draupadi laughs and says, Andhe ka beta andha. The son of a blind person is blind. Now, Draupadi never says anything like this. Nothing like that said at all. So these are all interpolations. Now, specifically with respect to Karna narrative, if you see, Madhvacharya gives a reconstruction of the Mahabharata, and he says, he has his own sources, based on which he says that actually Karna contested and missed the target. Now, we don't know exactly what happened. This is what Madhvacharya says. But apart from that, the academic scholars have also prepared a critical edition of the Mahabharata. Critical edition means they look at various editions of the Mahabharata and they try to figure out which is the original one. And even in that, they have not included this particular incident of Draupadi refusing Karna. So, that actually, if you look at the Mahabharata, as far as the Mahabharata text is concerned, that has not happened. But even if that we assume has happened, we have to look at the sequence of events. See, a Suta is considered to be below Kshatriya, and a Brahmana is considered to be above Kshatriya. So, in Draupadi's Swayamvar, when the Pandavas came, at that time the Pandavas were in forest, in hiding, because the Kauravas had planned to burn them in the Varanavarth forest. And they were in the garb of Brahmanas. So when they were in the garb of Brahmanas, at that time, when they came there, all the Kshatriyas first contested for the hand of Draupadi and nobody could win. And then after that, Arjuna got up. And Arjuna went to Drupada. And Arjuna at this time was in the dress of a Brahmana. So he asked, is a Brahmana allowed to participate in the Swayamvar? So then Drupada looked, this was the last thing that was expected. Now some of the Brahmanas, they all started, Arjuna, you should not go. He says, what the Kshatriyas cannot do, how will you be able to do? You will become a laughing stock. And then some other Brahmanas, they said, just see how well built he is. He will bring glory to the Brahmana class by showing that we Brahmanas are better than Kshatriyas also. There's all this dialogue was going on at that time. So Drupada looked curiously at this Brahmana and he said, the Brahmanas are always respectable for the Kshatriyas. And certainly you can participate in this. And then Arjuna participated and he shot the arrow in the target and he won Draupadi's hand. The point which I am making over here is, although Arjuna at that time was in the garb of a Brahmana, he still asked for permission before participating in the contest. He didn't presume that I have the right to participate. So even if we assume that Karna was rebuffed, but still, he should not have presumed that I have a right to participate. It was well known that it was a Swayamvar, the Kshatriyas are primarily participating. And by his presuming that I have a right to participate and then being rebuffed, he actually opened himself to a position where he could be dishonored. And more importantly, the whole point is that it is Draupadi's Swayamvar. Swayamvar, the very word means that she has a right to choose her groom. And now a contest can be set. But the purpose of the contest is to screen the candidates. Ultimately, it's her swayamvar and it's her choice. So, for her to choose was not wrong in that sense. So, the point is that now we don't have the Mahabharata that Vyasadeva wrote 5000 years ago. In India, because of the hot weather, whatever you write the scripture on, it doesn't preserve. So, unless there is a parampara which preserves the text very carefully, sometimes texts get lost. And when they are lost, that means what happens? The original script gets lost, and some things get added, some things get removed. So, the point is that even if we assume that Karna was dishonored, but is Draupadi to be blamed for that? Not necessarily. No. Yes, it was a society where caste had become solidified. Then you can't just blame, if at all, on caste basis, Draupadi rejected Karna. It's not exactly that. It's a swayamvar, so it's a right. But even if we argue for argument's sake that on caste basis Draupadi rejected Karna, but still, she can't be blamed. It was a system over there at that time. And she simply acted. She's just a young girl who is about to get married. And she cannot go, you cannot expect her to go against the whole social system. So, it is unfair for Karna to hold Draupadi alone responsible for his insult. And even if he feels Draupadi insulted me, it's one thing to call a warrior as a suitor. That is an insult. But it's a completely different category of insult to call a royal lady, a chaste wife, as a prostitute. It's unforgivable crime. And Karna himself, before the Kurukshetra battle starts, twice Karna admits that I have made a mistake. I should not have spoken to Draupadi like that. We'll come to those incidents later. Once he tells when he meets Krishna, before the Kurukshetra war, he tells Krishna, I was so caught with the desire to please Duryodhana that I did many things for his pleasure which I regret now. So, the whole gambling match, and Draupadi is disrobing, it was not so much because of lust as it is because of pride and arrogance. Now, all the Kauravas wanted to humiliate the Pandavas. And when they wanted to humiliate, Karna joined in that and he said, what humiliation can I offer? He says, call the Pandavas' wife a prostitute. What greater humiliation can be there? So he himself, he regrets it. And he tells the same thing to Bhishma. For the first 10 days of the war, Karna does not fight in the war. On the 11th day when he is supposed to fight, at that time he says, no, Bhishma is soon going to die. So he says, he goes and he buries the hatchet with Bhishma. And he says that, if I have offended you, please forgive me. And then he was, that time also he says, I did many things for pleasing the Duryodhana which I should not have done. And he always speaks this one, that I should not have called Draupadi prostitute. So this was quite a grievously wrong that Karna did. So actually speaking, again, in this assembly, it is Karna who suggests to Duryodhana, why not disrobe Draupadi? She's already our maid servant, she's already like a prostitute, disrobe her. And Duryodhana is delighted. And he says, Dushasana, you go and disrobe. So actually in the assembly, Draupadi comes out as the shining character and Karna comes out as his darkest over there. So now after this, the Pandavas go for exile and then they come back and then then Duryodhana rejects all the peace negotiations and then the fight is about to take place. So at that time, Krishna comes as a Shanti Dut. And Krishna tries to negotiate peace and Krishna goes to the next and he says, just give the Pandavas 5 villages. And Duryodhana adamantly refuses. Then, the next morning, Krishna requests Karna that I want to meet you. And when they meet, Krishna tells Karna that you are actually the son of Kunti. You are fighting against the Pandavas, but you are the eldest Pandava. And you are fighting on the side of Kaurava, of Duryodhana, because he gave you a kingdom. He says, you come on the side of the Pandavas, you will rule the whole world. The whole world is yours to rule. And Duryodhana is on the side of Adharma. And he is going to be killed. By going on his side, you too will be killed. So, Karna nods and he says, yes. He says, what you have told me, I knew it. Kunti has also came and told me that I am her son. So, anyways, he says that I know it, and he says what you are saying is also true. I had a dream in which I saw that Duryodhana is dressed in black, and he is being dragged to the nether regions. And Yudhishthira is dressed in white, and he's in a shining chariot with horses, and he is being lifted up towards the sky. And he says, this dream foretells that I am going to die, that the Kauravas are going to die, be destroyed. But he says, for so long have I been taken care of by the Kauravas. It is by his trust in the force of my arms that Duryodhana has waged hostilities against the Pandavas. At his moment of greatest need, if I desert him now, I will do him a great disservice. I will be labeled as a betrayer of a friend. And I have given him my word that I will fight with him. I will fight by his side. I cannot give up my word. So then Krishna embraces Karna and he says that it's your decision. If death is what you want, that is what you'll get. We'll meet on the battlefield next. And then they depart. So Karna, now sometimes Karna says, he's such a man of honor that he honored his word. But there is a choice. Karna had a choice between a word of honor and a life of honor. A word of honor and a life of honor. What does it mean? Certainly Karna was held by Duryodhana in his time of need. And when he is held in the time of need, it is natural to be grateful and it is desirable to be grateful. But then we cannot make gratitude as again, absolute moral principle. Why is that? Because if we are grateful to someone and that person tells us to do something grievous, then we may end up doing harm. So to give an extreme example, say, especially in Pakistan, Afghanistan, the Middle East, where there is oil, that's a rich country. But the other Islamic countries, they're quite poor. So if there are some poor children who are born in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and this poor child has no food, no clothing, no shelter, and at that time, some group of terrorists, they give him food, they give him clothing, they give him shelter, they help him to get trained. And then, naturally, because at his time of need, they gave him so much. But then afterwards, if they tell him, you become a terrorist and you kill thousands of innocent people, does gratitude for what they provided him in his childhood oblige him to become a terrorist and kill innocent people now? No. Gratitude is an important dharmic principle, but it has to be seen in the broader context of dharma, broader concept of what is right and wrong. So for Karna to be grateful to his friend Duryodhana is good. But to make that into an absolute principle and to not consider that actually Duryodhana's cause was wrong. Duryodhana was adharmic. Now if a prince, generally speaking, sometimes there are brutal people who abuse women, who molest women, so they do it. They do it discreetly, where nobody will catch them. But here, if a person like Duryodhana is ready to do it in a public assembly in the presence of his elders, Bhishma was there, Vidura was there, his own father was there. And if a king can do such a thing in public, what will that king do when he is in absolute power? During the 13-14 years during 13 years when Duryodhana was in rule, he did not do too much atrocious activities because his hold on the power was not very secure. He knew the Pandavas were going to come back. And he wanted to win over the citizens. That's why he tried to put on a very good garb and he gave a lot of charity and he tried to win the people over. But his nature was evil. And if he had got access to absolute power, he would have wreaked havoc. So the point is, overall, Duryodhana's cause was evil. And even if we say, no, he was also a prince, Yudhishthira was also a prince, then Duryodhana is entitled to kingdom. Fine. Duryodhana could have had half the kingdom. Doesn't Yudhishthira deserve at least half the kingdom? And Duryodhana, the Pandavas are ready to stay satisfied with 5 villages. Duryodhana is not ready to agree to that. So clearly, Duryodhana's cause was evil. He had done a lot of wrong things. And for Karna to choose the side of Duryodhana in such a situation was to choose a word of honor over a life of honor. A life of honor means to live on the side of dharma. And he made that disastrous blunder. And he had to reap the consequences for that in terms of he had to die on the warfield. Now, some people argue here that Duryodhana, that Krishna went to Karna and tried to win him over by bribing him with the offer of a kingdom. Because Karna was better than Arjuna. And because Karna was better than Arjuna, so Krishna was afraid. And to protect Arjuna, Krishna tried to bribe Karna. And Karna was so uprighteous that he refused the bribe. So, first of all, it was not a bribe. Because Krishna basically told him, you are the eldest Pandava, that's what you are entitled to if you come on the side of virtue. But more importantly, let's look at this premise whether Karna was really better than Arjuna. So, this is the last part of the class. We'll just go over history. Now we need a scorekeeper. We'll keep score. Now we'll see what are the duels between Karna and Arjuna and what happens. So the first encounter between them was in the martial exhibition, where both of them exhibited equal skills. And after that, there is no direct contest that happened between them. The second encounter between them was, so this first encounter we can say it's a draw. So Arjuna 0, Karna 0. The second encounter between them was in Draupadi's assembly. There Arjuna hit the target, Karna either did not hit or missed or was not allowed to participate. So again, that's not a way to decide. So again, it's a draw, it's a 0-0. Then after that, or slightly before this, immediately after the martial exhibition gets over, at that time, both the Kauravas and the Pandavas go to Drona. And they say that, what dakshina do you want? Now Drona had an old rivalry with Drupada. And he said, you arrest Drupada and bring him to me as a prisoner. So immediately both the Kauravas and the Pandavas start rushing away. And Arjuna tells Yudhishthira, wait. Because now what has happened is Duryodhana, he really wants to show his power. And because in the martial exhibition, the Pandavas had outclassed him, he thought, now I will get this dakshina. So Arjuna said, let the Kauravas go. And the Kauravas go, and Karna also goes with them. And then Drupada comes out with Drishtadyumna, and Drupada comes out with his army, and he defeats the Kauravas. All the 100 Kauravas, and with them Karna is also there. And he gets defeated. And then after that, the Kauravas flee. And then Arjuna says, let's go now. And the 5 Pandavas go, and just the 5 Pandavas, they defeat Drupada, his commander, his army, and they have Drupada arrested. So this is an indirect thing. Karna is defeated by Drupada, and Drupada is defeated by Arjuna. So, by indirect inference, you can say Arjuna 1, Karna 0. Now, if we look at direct contests, that they don't have too many direct contests, but there is another indirect contest. When the Pandavas are in forest, Duryodhana thinks that let me go and humiliate the Pandavas further. So he decides, I will go with all my wealth and my queens and my maidservants, and we'll flaunt our wealth. And the Pandavas will say, oh, we are living in the forest, we are so miserable. The nature of envy is that you cannot be satisfied with your own happiness. You have to make others miserable to be happy. I saw an advertisement of a car. It said, purchase this car and enjoy the envy in your neighbor's eyes. What a pathetic standard of enjoyment. So, Duryodhana, he had the kingdom, but he did not have happiness because he had so much envy. So anyway, when he went there, at that time, he wanted to go and bathe in a river, and the Gandharvas were bathing. And the Gandharvas said that this is our time, we will be bathing here, you should not come here. Now, Duryodhana had the arrogance. He says, I am the king of the earth now. So who are you? Get out of here. So the Gandharvas said that, we don't take orders from humans, we give orders to humans. So Duryodhana got angry and he attacked the Gandharvas. And there's a big fight in which Karna was there, Shakuni was there, Drishtadyumna was there, Duryodhana was there. And the Gandharvas completely routed them. And Karna became so severely wounded that Karna Along with Dushyasan, they fled from there. And Duryodhana felt so angry, all my troops were scattering. He kept fighting. And finally, Duryodhana had more anger inside him than skills outside. So he was overpowered. And he was arrested by the Gandharvas. And at that time, some of Duryodhana's soldiers, they ran over to Yudhishthir. So Duryodhana was on one bank of the river, Yudhishthir was on the other banks. And then they told Duryodhana has been arrested, please help him. So Bhima, he started laughing. He said, oh, what we would have done after great effort at the end of the exile. The Gandharvas have done for us now. Very good. So Yudhishthir was just a brother. But he was the eldest brother. So whenever he wanted to chastise anyone, he would immediately take a paternal role from a fraternal role. And he tells, oh child, now Bhima was like a massive Kshatriya, to have him call a child, it would pee him. So he says, oh child, among us, we may be 5 and they may be 100. But for the world, we are 105. And they have arrested not Duryodhana, but a prince of our dynasty. And they have arrested, Duryodhana's wife had also been arrested over there. They have arrested the ladies of our dynasty. Yudhishthira is so conscientious that he wants to protect the honor of Duryodhana's wife Lakshmana. And here we have Duryodhana and his friend Karna calling Yudhishthira's wife as a prostitute. This is a difference in their values. So, now Bhima, he did not at all want to go and fight. So why should I fight for Duryodhana? I want to fight against Duryodhana. So at that time, Yudhishthira, he's principled, but he was also Kshatriya, he was intelligent. Then he wanted to get Duryodhana to accompany, he wanted Bhima to go. So he said, oh brother, what will give you greater joy than to have your opponent dependent on his freedom, on your mercy? Now I'll go and fight. So Bhima agreed at that time. But then, Bhima, when he went there, Arjuna went on his chariot. So Arjuna fought with the Gandharva king and Bhima fought with the other soldiers. The point is that Arjuna defeated the Gandharvas. So again, Karna was defeated by the Gandharvas and the Gandharvas defeated by Arjuna. So again, Arjuna 2, Karna 0. Now, the direct fights, let's see when all the direct fights happen between them. The first direct fight between them happens in Virat. At the end of the Pandavas' Ajñatavas, Duryodhana has come with his whole army, all the warriors, and Arjuna is alone. And Arjuna single-handedly defeats all the Kaurava warriors. Duryodhana, Dushasuna, Shakuni, Kripa, Drona, Ashwathama, Bhishma, and Karna. In fact, Karna is so angry that he fights twice. First he's repulsed, he gets wounded and he falls unconscious and his charioteer takes him away. Second time he comes. Second time also he's wounded and he falls unconscious. And so what to speak of Karna being better than Arjuna? Arjuna is better than all the Kaurava warriors combined together. So Arjuna clearly and squarely defeats Karna over there. Then, for the first 10 days, Karna doesn't fight. Because he feels that Bhishma has insulted me. So I will not fight as long as Bhishma is the commander. So then on the 11th day, he enters the battle. And Krishna arranges that there are no direct fights between Karna and Arjuna in the initial stages. Karna is engaged with other warriors and still Drona is in the command. So Arjuna's main fight is with Drona. On the 15th day, Drona falls. And 16th and 17th days, Karna is the commander. Now, on the 16th day, Karna fights with all the Pandava brothers except Arjuna. And he defeats all of them. He wounds all of them. He insults them. Actually, this is a different subject. I will not go into it. There are 4 fights that happen between Bhima and Karna also. And actually, 3 times Bhima bests Karna. So what to speak of Karna being the best archer, as far as the war verdict is concerned, even Bhima turns out to be better than Karna. But anyway, let's put it aside. Coming to Arjuna-Karna fight. So, the main fight between them happens on the 17th day. And on the 17th day, the normal narrative that is shown on movies and TV is that Karna is fighting very heroically. And while he is fighting, suddenly his chariot starts going into the earth. and his chariot goes into his earth. At that time, he tells Arjuna, stop, please don't fight while I am not ready to fight. So he says, let me get my chariot out and then we'll fight. And then it is said that he is off his chariot, is trying to pull out his chariot. And at that time, Krishna tells Arjuna, shoot Karna. And then then Arjuna kills Karna. And this seems to be very unfair. Now this is what is often thought, and there are many places also this is depicted, how Arjuna is shooting an arrow. Sometimes temples have architecture. So this image is depicted, Karna is near his chariot and Arjuna's arrow cuts off his head. Now again, if we just take this scene, it will seem unfair. But we have to look at the full context. See, at the start of the Kurukshetra war, Bhishma is the commander of the Kauravas and Drishtadyumna is the commander of the Pandavas. So the two commanders meet. And the Kauravas remind the Pandavas of the codes of war. We should follow these codes. And Drishtadyumna starts thinking. He says the Kauravas have been so vicious on so many occasions. Why are they now talking about the codes of war? So Drishtadyumna says that we will not be the first to violate the codes of war. But if the Kauravas violate the codes of war, then we will not hold ourselves back. So more or less during the first 10 days of war, when Bhishma is the commander, at that time more or less most codes of war are followed. But after Drona becomes the commander, is mayhem. And the most atrocious violation of the code of war is killing of Abhimanyu. Now here, if we see Arjuna shooting Karna when he was off his chariot is not equipped to fight. That we could say that is bad. But what the Kauravas do to Abhimanyu is worse. Because at least between Arjuna and Karna there was one warrior fighting. But Abhimanyu is alone and 6 warriors attack him. Actually, when Abhimanyu penetrates in Chakravyuha, he just destroying the Kaurava army from within. And at that time, Karna challenges Abhimanyu, and Abhimanyu's arrows send Karna reeling. He practically faints. And then Duryodhana is alarmed. He said, oh Karna, you said that you will kill Arjuna, but you're not able to kill even the son of Arjuna. So Karna is flummoxed. He says, I just can't see any cracks in his defense. I'm trying my best. He says, let us go to Drona. He's our commander and he will find some strategy by which we can deal with him. And then when he goes to Drona, Drona is observing Abhimanyu fighting. And then Drona turns to Duryodhana and Karna and he says, just see this lad. What expertise he has in fighting. You can't find any weakness in him. So Duryodhana is so angry. He says, if my commander is wasting his time admiring my enemy, then I am doomed. Then, what happens is, Duryodhana repeatedly casts aspersions on the loyalty of Bhishma and Drona. He always accuses them, you are partial to the Pandavas, that's why you're not fighting wholeheartedly. And although Bhishma is not goaded too much by that, but Drona gets goaded by that. And Drona says, after all, I'm your commander, and it's my duty to protect my army, whatever happens. So he says, in a fair fight, we cannot win. So he says, what we'll do is, 6 of us will attack him together. And then one of the 6 is Karna also. So Abhimanyu is fighting and he repulses in 1-to-1 duel combat all the Kaurava warriors, even Drona, even Karna, or to speak of Duryodhana. But then 6 of them, Drona, Kripa, Karna, Ashwathama, Duryodhana and Dushasana, all 6 of them attack. And one of them destroys his chariot, one of chariot wheels, another destroys his bow and arrow, another destroys his armor, another kills his charioteer, another kills his horses. So he is carless, is chariotless, weaponless, defenseless. Normally, the Kshatriya code is that you should fight against equals. And equals also should fight when they are equipped and they're alert. So in such a situation where the opponent is chariotless, weaponless, defenseless, an opponent should never be attacked. But Karna does the same thing which was done to him. So in one sense, the Pandavas are simply paying Karna back in his own coin. Further, if we see, then so Karna takes part in this scheme to kill Abhimanyu. Then later on, this happens on the 13th day. 14th day, Arjuna takes this formidable vow that tomorrow I'll kill Jayadratha. And then the whole Kaurava army is arranged to protect Jayadratha. And Arjuna penetrates deep into the Kaurava army and he goes in fighting. And then finally, Krishna tells Arjuna that such is the ferocity of the fight that your horses have become exhausted now. And he says that you will not be able to, that they cannot sustain the pace. So therefore, they need rest. Now, what does Arjuna do? Arjuna immediately shoots a flurry of arrows and makes a clearing in the war field itself. And then he invokes some mystic weapons and he shoots arrows. And there, in the war field itself, a lake appears and a river appears. And trees with fruits and shrubs appear. And he tells Krishna, go and take care of the horses. Krishna says, bravo, amazing feat of archery, he says. And then Krishna is appreciating there. Now the important point is, here Arjuna is chariotless. And the Kauravas don't stop attacking him. In fact, they charge on him from their elephants, from their horses, from their chariots. And Partha, although he's all alone, Arjuna remembers this later, Mam Siranta Vaham Arayo Rathino Stham. He says, Mam Shranta Vaham, my Vaha, my horses were tired. And Rathino, I was without a Ratha. And my opponents were having Ratha. And still, I was protected. So the point is that Arjuna was also put in the same situation. Now Arjuna does not complain, hey, remember the codes of war, don't attack me now, I don't have a chariot. He doesn't do that. It's a dead heat of the battle is there. And he fights. Whatever deal we get in life, we have to fight with that deal. So Arjuna doesn't complain over there. So twice, what happens is, the Kauravas do the same thing that the Pandavas are going to do towards Arjuna, towards Karna in the end, what Arjuna does. Now thirdly, on the 17th day itself, the same thing Karna does to Arjuna directly. What happens is, when the Pandavas and when Karna and Arjuna are fighting, so there is a snake arrow. There's Sarpa Astra. There is a snake Ashwasena who enters into the bow, into one of the arrows of Karna. And he says that he had some vendetta against Arjuna and he wanted to kill Arjuna. So he enters into Karna's arrow and he shoots the arrow. So when Karna shoots the arrow, now Arjuna, when they're fighting, Arjuna also has a formidable armor. So normally they deal with the arrows in 3 different ways. One is that you counter, if the opponent's arrow is there, you counter it by hitting it and stopping it in its path. Second is you evade it. So the charioteer will just move the chariot so that the arrow will not hit the target. And the third is, you let the arrow hit, but the arrow hits the armor and nothing happens. So in the heat of the fight, Arjuna, he sees this arrow coming, but he does not recognize what that arrow is. So he lets the arrow come towards him. And he lets the arrow come towards him. So at that time, Shalya, who is the charioteer of Karna, he recognizes this is Ashwastra. He said, Karna, play it safe. You shoot the arrow at Arjuna's heart. Because if you miss the heart, above there is a neck, below there is a stomach. And both are fatal points. So don't take chances. But Karna, he had a flair for the dramatic. If you shoot a warrior and his head gets lopped off and the head flies in the air and falls off, it's a magnificent win. It's like a batsman can score 1 run and win a match, and you can hit a sixer and win a match. So Karna wants to hit a sixer. He says, not only will I kill Arjuna, I'll just lop off his head. So although Shalya tells him, shoot at the chest, Karna does not listen to him and he says, I'll shoot at his neck. And then as that arrow is whizzing towards Arjuna, Arjuna does not recognize that arrow, but Krishna recognizes. And Krishna, he's on the chariot and suddenly he puts his legs forcefully down on the footrest of the chariot. And because he puts his foot forcefully down, so the whole chariot sinks into the ground. And Krishna uses full weight. And then, because the chariot sinks into the ground, so the arrow which was meant to be hit Arjuna on his neck, it knocks off his crown. It knocks off his crown. So Krishna protects Arjuna. But the point relevant for our discussion is that immediately, this Ashvasen, this arrow, so Ashvasen is a snake who has entered into that arrow. He immediately goes back to Karna. And he tells Karna that, I had entered this warrior, I had entered your arrow, but you did not recognize me. He says, shoot again now. And you can kill Arjuna right now. So Karna says, I will never use the same arrow again. And I will not take anyone else's help. I'll shoot and kill myself. And he starts shooting arrows again. Now the important point is, at this point, Arjuna's chariot has gone under the ground. Because Krishna put his foot, so it's gone underground. He's immobilized. And again, Arjuna doesn't protest. Hey, Karna, don't shoot at me. My chariot is immobilized. What happens? Krishna gets off the chariot and lifts the whole chariot up. Arjuna is already there. The chariot is heavy. Arjuna is there also. But Krishna lifts the chariot, pulls it out of the hole, which has happened in the earth because of their forceful legs impact. And then they keep fighting. So during the movements, when Krishna is off the chariot, Arjuna is in the same situation. But Karna does not stop fighting. Karna does not stop attacking. So 3 instances with Abhimanyu, Karna himself does the same thing. With Arjuna on the 14th day, the Kauravas do the same thing. And with Arjuna, directly Karna does the same thing. Then after that, as the war is going on and on and on, at that time, when Karna's chariot goes under the ground, then he just jumps up and tries to pull the chariot out. He says to pull the chariot out, and it doesn't come out. Now, Karna starts ranting, how unjust is providence. I have always tried to live according to dharma, and still I am being betrayed like this. He gets very angry. He takes out his Bhargavastra and shoots. And thousands of soldiers on the Pandava side are killed. And Bhima gets very angry. Bhima says, oh Arjuna, how have you let Karna wreak such havoc in our forces in your eyes? If you are going soft, then I will kill Karna right now. So then Arjuna takes out his Brahmastra and he shoots. Karna is overwhelmed by that. There's a havoc in the Pandava Kaurava camp because of that. Then Karna becomes desperate. He's fighting, but his chariot is sinking, and that's why he's not able to move. So, as I said, you evade the arrows, counter the arrows, or let the arrows hit. So he's not able to evade the arrows. And Arjuna is attacking with so much force that he cannot counter all the arrows. So the arrows started hitting Karna and starts getting wounded. And by the sustained attack, Karna starts getting wounded. And when that happens, Karna tells Arjuna, oh Partha, do not entertain the thoughts entertained by cowards. Remember the codes of virtue and wait till I am ready to fight. Wait till I get my chariot out of the earth. Now, when he speaks this, Arjuna immediately dutifully lowers his bow. And then Krishna tells Karna, oh Karna, it is fortunate indeed that today you remember the codes of virtue. What happened to your memory of the codes of virtue when you, along with the 5 Kaurava Bharatas, killed the lad Abhimanyu? Was it virtue that made you suggest that Draupadi be disrobed? Was it virtue that made you call Draupadi a prostitute? Was it virtue by which you conspired to have the Pandavas burnt alive in a house of lac? Was it virtue by which the Pandavas were dispossessed and robbed of their whole kingdom during the ice match? Was it virtue at all these times, O Karna? If that was virtue that you used, Arjuna will use the same virtue today. Arjuna, shoot. And Arjuna shoots the arrow and kills Karna. So, if you see, Krishna could have arranged for Arjuna to kill Karna in a fair match. As I said, we lost track of the score, but the score was basically Arjuna 2, Karna 0. Or 3 rather. Thrice is, he defeated Drupada, he defeated Gandharvas, and directly in the Virat. So Arjuna 3, Karna 0. So in a direct face-off match, Arjuna could have defeated Karna. But the point is, Krishna also wants to illustrate some other principle. That principle is that Shato Shatyam. There are 3 kinds of morality. I'll conclude this class with this. There is what is called as Brahaspati Niti, there is Shukra Niti, and there is Kanaka Niti. There are many kinds of nitis, but broadly speaking, Brahaspati is the guru of the Devatas. So Brahaspati Niti is always fight virtuously. No matter how the opponent fights, always fight virtuously. The Shukra Niti is that fight virtuously with a virtuous opponent. But if you are fighting with a vicious opponent and sticking to virtue will lead to your defeat, then you have to pay them back in their coin. Shatho Shatyam. Shatho Shatyam. And thirdly is Kanaka was one of the advisors of Shakuni. At that time, everybody had their Brahmana advisors. So Shakuna also had a Brahmana advisor. But this Brahmana was almost like a pervert. So when Dhritarashtra had some pangs of conscience, he says, how can I let my nephews be burnt alive? How can I through gambling, steal all their kingdom? So at that time, Shakuni gets Kanaka. And he says that, this Kanaka tells him that actually the most important code of dharma is to protect your interests. And for protecting your interests, even if you have to kill your relatives, doesn't matter. Now this is not dharma, this is only Kanaka's dharma. So anyway, the Kanaka Niti is that just protect your interests. Whatever happens, whatever you have to do, do it. So Krishna is demonstrating that, in general we should be virtuous. But if we are pitted against vicious opponents, then at times we may have to pay them back in the coin. So Krishna is wanting to illustrate this principle. And that's why Krishna arranges for, as Chanakya calls it, Shatho Shatyam. With the cunning, be cunning. Shatho Shatyam. So Krishna demonstrates this principle. So overall, from the Mahabharata, Karna emerges definitely the tragic figure. And his death is tragic. But the important point is, if you look at the Karna narrative carefully, we see it's a tragedy which Karna brings upon himself. Now, Krishna offered him an opportunity to side with virtue. And Karna refused that opportunity. That was his tragic blunder which he made. So, yes, injustice happened to him. But as I said, injustice happens to everyone in life. How we respond to it is important. So, Karna's mistake is that in the Mahabharata itself says that Karna's mistake was misdirected loyalty. He's loyal, but to whom are you going to be loyal? To a person who is himself a dharmic. To be loyal to such a person is not really loyalty. For example, there are these suicide bombers who, they say, we are very loyal to our cause, our commander. We will give up our life and we'll blow ourselves up. But what is that loyalty? You're causing the death of innocent people, and that your leader is a brutal person, and to be loyal to such a person is not really loyalty. So, Krishna, despite all the mistakes that Karna had done, all the grievous things that Karna had done, still Krishna offered Karna a chance for redemption. Krishna offered Karna a chance to redeem himself. Karna, we don't know how things could have happened alternatively, but Karna was a virtuous person. If his paths had never caused Duryodhana, he would probably have lived a life of virtue. But by the association of Duryodhana, he was emotionally manipulated, and he let himself be manipulated, and he acted in several vicious ways. But in spite of that, Krishna gave an opportunity to Karna to redeem himself. So Karna's mistake, if you want to say that, his first mistake was an unquestioning loyalty to Duryodhana. Yes, we have to be loyal, but then we also have to see what cause I am loyal to. An unquestioning loyalty can be a dangerous thing. So his loyalty to Duryodhana, no matter what Duryodhana did, that was wrong. Initial gratitude is good. And his biggest blunder was when Krishna offered him a chance to redeem himself, he refused. That is, whatever Duryodhana has, Karna may feel grateful to Duryodhana that he gave me the Anga kingdom. But as I said, the Anga kingdom was not Duryodhana's to give, first of all. Even if we say it was Duryodhana's, where did Duryodhana get the kingdom from? Ultimately, everything comes from God. So if God himself is coming and telling him, you fight on this side, Karna should have accepted that. So Karna is a tragic figure, but his tragedy is largely self-inflicted. It's a self-inflicted tragedy. And the Mahabharata teaches us many principles, but one of the most important principles it teaches us is this, that Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone. And Krishna, although Arjuna is Krishna's great devotee, and naturally Krishna wants to take care of Arjuna, but Krishna is ready to even approach Karna, actually for a king to go as a peace messenger, Shanti Doot. Normally it's, suppose there's a conflict between India and Pakistan. Say the Prime Minister of India may send some foreign secretary or someone like that as a messenger. The Prime Minister of India will himself not go as a messenger. So for Krishna to himself go as a peace messenger, that itself is an act of great humility. And further, after his proposal was callously disregarded. Imagine India-Pakistan, some conflict is going on. So Indian government sends the foreign secretary as a peace messenger. And Pakistan arrests the foreign secretary and imprisons him only. That would be outrageous. Isn't it? That's what Duryodhana tried to do. Krishna had gone as a peace messenger, and Duryodhana tried to arrest. An important thing is, again, Karna did not oppose this. And then, in spite of that, Krishna gave Karna a further chance. So, after Duryodhana had been rejected, Krishna gave Karna a chance. So, Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone. He was the well-wisher even of Karna. But unfortunately, Karna's loyalty was misdirected. Not just that, even if Karna did not accept Krishna as God, even if he says, I don't believe Krishna is God, still, even from the point of view of mundane morality, the Pandavas' cause was more virtuous than the Kauravas' cause. And the Pandavas had offered a proposal that was eminently reasonable. Just 5 villages. When Duryodhana refuses that, at least at that time, Karna should have chosen the Pandavas. When he did not, he brought the consequences upon himself. So the Mahabharata has many subtleties, but the important point of the subtleties is that there is Krishna who is the well-wisher of everyone. And even those who are his opponents, he will be the well-wisher. But how those good wishes come out, that will vary depending on how that person reciprocates. So there is a very nice Bhagavatam commentator. In the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam starts with, is God partial? Krishna, Narasimha favored Prahlad and he killed Hiranyakashipu. So is he partial? The Bhagavatam says that God is not partial, God is reciprocal. How we approach him, he reciprocates. So there's one Bhagavatam commentator, Vamshidhar, he gives a beautiful commentary. He says, how is Narasimhadev equal? He says, both Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu got the lap of Narasimha. But they got there in different ways. Why? Because their attitudes were different. So, Krishna is not partial, he is beneficial to everyone. But depending on how people approach him, Krishna reciprocates accordingly. Thank you very much. Shri Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanande.